Hey guys, this is Bevan here, and in this video I'm going to share with you 9 things that you should not do when you're camping with wildlife. First up, when I say camping with wildlife, I'm not talking about getting out on foot and trekking through a wildlife area on a wild camp. That is an entirely different video altogether. Rather, what I'm referring to is camping in a campsite that's in a wildlife area, like a game reserve or something like that, or just camping where there's going to be wildlife around you. One other point is that being from South Africa, most of my camping has been done in the Southern Africa region. So wildlife like monkeys, baboons, elephants, lions, things like that are what come from my side of the world. Now, bears, coyotes, wolves, I have almost no experience with that whatsoever. So you may want to check with the specifics of your region. But I'm hoping that this general guide is still a help to you. So with that, let's jump on in. Now, I want to start with a little story. If you'd like to skip the story, then jump on over to this timestamp over here and you can get straight into the list. But if you're keen for a little campfire story, I've got a good one for you right now. A couple of years ago, I was leading a trip through Tanzania. I was still a tour guide at the time, and I was with a group of young Americans who'd come out to do some volunteer work and explore a few of the game reserves of the region. Now, one of our stops was in the Mikumi Game Reserve, which borders the Sluice, which is kind of in the south central region of Tanzania, and one of my absolute favorite places in the world. We've been driving a long time and we finally pulled up to our little bush campsite, which was nothing more than a clearing around a giant baobab tree, and that was where we were going to be staying for the next few days. Because we had a little bit of daylight left, our group really wanted to get out onto a game drive, so they all piled back into the truck and they left with the driver, leaving the cook and myself behind to set up camp and get dinner started. Now, while we were kind of getting busy with our camp duties, we both heard this low rumble coming across the savannah. And if any of you guys have ever heard a lion roar, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't hear that with your ears, you hear that with your entire being. From the top of your head to the bottom of your toes, your whole body resonates with that sound. We heard one roar come through, the next one, the next one, the next one, and it became pretty clear to us that there was a pride of lions moving through the bushveld around us. We kind of gave each other a little bit of a nervous glance. We started making some mental escape plans, started looking for routes up that baobab, but the Mikumi is kind of one of those reserves known for its lions in the trees, so I don't think that would have worked for us either. But luckily for us, it didn't really come to any of that, because after a couple of tense moments, our group arrived back with the truck, and we kind of felt that the noise that everyone was creating was enough of a deterrent and we were safe for the time being. Anyway, our group had had one of the best game drives possible. They'd seen lions in the trees, they'd seen a lion hunt. It was actually, I was quite jealous, to be honest. And those campfire stories were just coming in thick and fast. And as the conversation started to wane a little bit, my team and I took that as an opportunity to really sit down and get a little bit serious with the guys and explain to them exactly what they should be expecting from camping out in a wildlife area. We went through a number of the tips we're going to go through today, but the most important thing to consider for them was that we were not in a zoo. This wasn't a place where the animals get put away for the night. We very well could and probably would have wild animals coming through our campsite. Now, the kids all listened very attentively, but there was one guy who kind of just nodded and had a little grin on his face, thinking we're just telling ghost stories. And he was the chaperone of the group. He was an older guy who was there to look after everyone, and he just thought we were telling ghost stories to try and scare these guys. And later on that night, he thought it would be a very romantic idea to spend the night under the African stars. So while everyone had zipped up and gone to bed, he took out his bedroll, took out his sleeping bag, and set it up next to the campfire. Sometime in the night, I was awoken by the frantic scratching sound of a guy just in complete panic. And it was this dude, he was scratching at my tent, begging me to open up in kind of a muffled voice, just saying, "There's lions, there's lions, there's lions." I first up thought, who on earth is outside at this time of the night? I went to open my tent, and I don't even think the zips had parted ways when this nose, this face, this head, then this body just materialized into my tent, slammed onto the back of the wall, and just dropped into the fetal position where he spent the rest of the night just mumbling to himself that there were lions. I don't think this poor dude got a wink of sleep that entire night. And in the morning, we took him outside and showed him where he'd set up his bedroll, and there were saucer-sized lion prints just trodden all over the show. So he got away with that one, to be honest, and he didn't do that again, needless to say. And he made a cardinal error, and we can learn from his mistakes with some of these tips on what you should never do when camping in a wildlife area. So let's start with that list. Number 1, do not think that a fenced campsite is an impenetrable fortress. We've had everything from honey badgers to bush pigs to lions to hyenas, monkeys, all kinds of wild animals come into our campsite while we were behind electric fencing. Your foremost expectation should be that there absolutely will be wild animals coming through your campsite. Now, hopefully it's something harmless like an inyala or an impala come to graze, but don't put it out of your mind that it's possible a big predator might be in there as well. The best defense against this is to be forewarned so that you're not surprised and that you've already prepared for such an eventuality. Number 2, don't leave any food lying around. Now, this is a cardinal rule when it comes to camping in wildlife areas. Animals are attracted by the smell of food, and if you leave it around, they're gonna come searching for that food. Now, this also applies to things that smell like food. So your garbage, your braai grid, if you've cooked on it the night before, even some of your toiletries like your toothpaste, some scented soaps, things like that could also act as attractants to wildlife. I've heard many stories of hyenas raiding tents just to eat the gelatin from the soap. If you do have food, make sure you store it in your car or in a box that you can clamp down, really lock it shut, and that'll keep it out of smell's way for any animals that are passing by. Number 3, do not feed the wildlife. Now, it might be tempting to want to do this, but what you're doing is you're causing those animals to lose their fear of humans, and it increases the risk of a negative contact. The biggest culprits for things like this in South Africa are your monkeys, your baboons, your mongooses, those kind of regular campsite critters that become very aggressive when you get between them and the food they're expecting to get. Best thing to do is just let them be. Don't feed them, and make sure, like we said before, your food is locked up and safe from being burgled. Number 4, do not provoke any of the wildlife in your camp. Now, as I said earlier, you should expect wildlife to be there. So when you find an animal in your tent or in your campsite, don't do things like run at it, shout and scream and go crazy, throw things at it, try to attack it. All this is going to do is cause it to go into one of its self-defense reactions, which is either fight or flight. And if it chooses fight, the chances of you winning that confrontation are very slim. A big baboon is going to do some serious damage to you, and even something small like a monkey is going to send you to the hospital for a rabies shot. Number 5, do not leave your tent at night. Now, the story of our friend in the beginning should be testimony to that, but there are also other animals that come out at night that are not necessarily predators, but are also just as dangerous. For example, hippos are nighttime grazers, and they often come through unfenced campsites. And if you come out in the night and you stumble on one of those, you are in some serious trouble. The best thing to do is once that tent is zipped up, stay in there until daybreak. Number 6, don't leave your tent open even just a little. Now, I have seen this go wrong for me plenty of times. The slightest gap is an invitation for a monkey or something like that to pry that tent open and get on in. At worst, you might be inviting a predator or something big that will come into your tent at night. Now, this is very rare, but there are a number of stories of animals like hyenas getting into tents and doing some serious damage to people because they left their tent open. If you want to feel extra secure, put the tent zips together and clasp them closed with a cable tie that you can just cut open in the morning. And that's going to make you feel a whole lot safer. Number 7, do not spray any bug poison in the bush. Now, it might be tempting to do this, especially if you're being harassed by mosquitoes at night, but a bug poison is going to cause a poison cycle that affects many more animals than just the bugs you're spraying. Birds are the most likely victims for this kind of a tactic, as they will eat those poison bugs and become poisoned themselves. So just don't do it. Rather look for alternative remedies to repel insects, such as burning citronella oils or wild sage, or bringing along a mosquito repellent so that you don't have to use any poison whatsoever. Number 8, do not leave kids unattended even if you're behind a fenced enclosure. Now, young kids are targets in the bush, particularly for predators. They see them as easy targets and prey, and you don't want to have your kids wandering out of eyesight in case some kind of a disaster happens. Now, even Jill, who's not a kid by any means, has attracted the attention of a leopard while we were inside the vehicle. And that was a hair-raising experience. So make sure if you're in a campsite that your kids are in eyesight and that they are not wandering off by themselves. And number 9, do not set up your camp in an area where animals are expected to be. Now, in a fenced campsite, this is not usually the case because these are kind of away from those scenarios. But if you're in an unfenced situation or somewhere where the campsite is a bit open, then you're going to want to pay attention to things like animal tracks through the bush. You're going to want to look for breaks in the reeds where, say, hippos come in and out frequently. And you're also going to want to avoid camping right on a riverbank. Things like a flash flood could occur in a very rare instance, but a more likely scenario in Africa is that there's a crocodile lurking nearby, and you do not want to get tangled up with one of those. So that's all I have for you in this video right over here. If you found it helpful, give it a like. And if you want to see more adventure and outdoor content like this, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be sure to be notified when we upload something new. And in the comments down below, let me know anything that you would add to this list, or else any wildlife encounters you've had while you've been camping. And until next time, bye-bye.